Alright guys, so to recap from the last video in this building with GPT series, we successfully installed our development environment. In this video, what we're going to do is just hop right into learning how to use the OpenAI API to interact with GPT. And honestly, I'm not even going to make this introduction any longer. Let's just hop right into the actual video. Alright guys, so let's first understand what an API even is. An API is basically a way to interact with your website's features or with an application's features from your own code. So for example, maybe you log into a website and there are certain things you can do on that website, for example, like chat with an AI model, or whatever it may be, maybe like searching YouTube videos or whatever it is. An API is basically a way to, interact with the features of a website, but actually do it from your own code. And then using that, you can basically use the features of a different website in your own applications and in your own projects. What we're going to be doing in this series is basically using the OpenAI API to access GPT from our own code, right? So just like you would go to the, chat.openai.com and go ahead and input whatever prompt you want, we're basically doing a similar thing except inputting that from our code instead of actually doing it directly from the website, allowing us to kind of mesh GPT into our own applications and our own projects. Alright guys, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the documentation and basically how to read some important things that we're going to need here. So go over to your platform.openai.com here and click on documentation. Now here what we want to go ahead and do is search for authentication. So you searched for it. And here we're just going to read some of this together, right? So the OpenAI API key uses API keys for authentication. We know this and we already went into this with the setting up our development environment. Again, it's secret, don't share it, or other people can use your basically OpenAI account and charge you money and things like that. But anyways, you guys probably aren't going to be sharing it with anyone anyways. It's more kind of for me since I'm making a video here. Here it says all API requests should include your API key in an authorization HTTP header as follows. So the reason for this is basically so it can actually authenticate you and give you access and then charge your account properly, right? So this is basically the format for when we're sending a request to the API. This is how it should be, right? We should have an authorization and then it should be bearer and then space OpenAI key. So some basic information for authentication. Now if we go over here to our thing right here, you can actually see right over here what we're doing is we're passing in our OpenAI API key, which is basically doing whatever it's saying over here. Here we're not like manually sending the request, we're using this OpenAI package, which is why we're doing it in this way without the header and stuff like that. But this is basically the same concept, right? Next thing here we want to do is go to making requests. So here is basically showing us what we want to do to actually send out a request, right? So if we go over here, you can see we're doing something pretty similar. As what we're doing here is we're saying completion and then client.chat.completions.create, setting the model and then setting the messages, right? So here you can see model, messages, right? And then there's other stuff you can add into like temperature for like creativity and different things like that. So here you can see we are doing a similar thing. We're setting the model and we're setting the messages, and here we're gonna say role system content. So basically these are the system instructions. And basically we're just defining what it is. And here this is the actual prompt that we're inputting in here, right? So this is the format that we use when we're making requests. The next thing is we need to understand response formats, right? So here we can actually see this is what gives us back when we make a request, right? So here you can see what we're doing is we're actually printing, because what we're doing is we're making this request and we're saving it in the variable called completion. Then over here we're referencing choices and then 0, aka the first item, and then we're getting the message, right? So if you go here, what we're doing is we're referencing choices and then we're going to index 0 basically, which is going to be the first item in this, which is this whole thing, and then we're getting out the message, right? As you can see here, so completion, right, which is basically our variable here that actually has this whole thing in it, dot choices 0, aka choices, and then 0 since this is the first item, dot message, which is going to here, and it's giving out our message here, right, content and then whatever it is. So this is how we basically, first of all, this is how we read documentation, And this is actually how we make an API request, right? So if you guys are ever confused, if things are not working for you, maybe you're watching this in the future and things are updated, so go over here, search for stuff, and then you read it out and try to figure out how you need to update your thing or what you could be doing wrong and how to fix it. Alright guys, now what we're gonna go ahead and do is go ahead and again code this example of basically sending a request with the API, because honestly I think this repetition is going to be really important, and in case you missed the last video, it's going to be really important that now with this new knowledge you go ahead and understand every single component of this code. So again, if you are confused about this development environment and what this even is, go to the previous video where I show you guys how to set it all up. So deleted, and now we're gonna code it again. So now with this new understanding that you guys have with documentation, I'm going to go ahead and explain this more in depth, right? So here what we're doing is from OpenAI import OpenAI. So this is actually the API kind of package that we're going to use to actually interact and have the different functions we need to interact with the OpenAI API, right? If this is not working for you, again, go back to the last video where I show how to actually install this. Then we're going to do import OS. I don't think you actually need to do that, I'm just doing that right now. Then what you want to do is go ahead and set the client variable to OpenAI API key, and then go over here, go ahead and input your API key. I'm not going to do it so I don't leak it to you guys, but go ahead and input your API key. So here when we actually build out the request, it's going to be knowing to use this API key, which is going to be really important, right? And here we're going to do is completion, so meaning we're going to save the result of our code that we're about to just write right now into this variable called completion. Then here we're going to say client dot chat, right? So this client is being defined by this OpenAI right over here, right, with our package. And then here we're going to be using dot chat dot completions dot create. Here we're going to pass in some arguments, right? So here we're going to say model is going to be GPT-3.5-turbo. And here we're gonna say messages, right? So first we define the model, now we're gonna actually define the messages we're gonna actually send in. First thing we're gonna say here is role, so meaning we're gonna be saying the role first. And that's gonna be system. Over here we're gonna say content. So this is actually gonna be the content that we're passing into the system role, and we're gonna say, example, you are a poetic assistant skilled in explaining complex programming concepts with creative flair. Now what we're going to do is, now that we've set the system instructions, we're actually going to set in the prompt we're going to pass in. So here we're going to say role, and then set user, since now we're actually giving the prompt to the AI. I'm going to say the content, which is going to be the prompt itself here. Content. Here we go. And then the content which we're gonna actually pass in is compose a poem that explains the concept of recursion and programming, right? It's the example they use, right? Then here what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the end outside of this, and we're gonna say print completion, aka our variable, right? Completion dot choices, since this is actually going to be, part of the response that we get that I just went over. 0, meaning the first item, dot message, so we get the message from that. And then this is actually what we're going to go ahead and print out to the terminal. Then if you guys run this, you should get a response. Alright guys, we're now going to go over how to actually handle responses from the API. So here is what the format basically looks like, as you guys can see right here. Right, we're going to mainly focus on two things, which is choices and these tokens, right? So here in choices, we're going to mainly focus on message right here. And here you can see this is basically the content. So this is basically whatever you're getting out, which is going to be given to you right here in choices, and then message, and then content. Then here you also got role as assistant, because basically it's outputting you the text, so it's fulfilling the assistant role basically in this interaction, right? So these are the two important things in the choices. Then the next thing over here you want to take a look at is usage, and then tokens, right? So one token is about 4 characters in English, and basically this is how we track our usage, right? So you can see completion tokens, which is like 17, for example. So this is the tokens of whatever it actually outputs. The prompt tokens, which is the tokens that you actually gave it as a prompt, and the total tokens, right? So this is how you track your usage and actually track kind of how much you're actually spending out here. Alright guys, now you guys might face some errors, right? The most common errors you're actually gonna face is gonna be errors of authentication and rate limiting. So the authentication issue is gonna be you didn't provide your API key, simple as that. Just provide your key or your key is wrong or revoked or something like that. And then the issue you might find with rate limiting is that either the money has gone over your account, you've hit some sort of limit, something like that, right? Or you just requested it too many times in a short time frame. These are generally the things that would cause a rate limiting issue with an API in general, right? So you're actually, if you encounter these errors, you're actually gonna have to go and, find for yourself what is the issue in your dashboard or in your code and actually, identify that, right? You can always use GPT to help you out, as you guys know. Now what we're going to do is actually go ahead and practically implement getting out this response and displaying it on a web page, right? To kind of build up to the project we're going to be making. So let's go here and let's open up our little, OpenAI area right here, our little VS Code area right here. So this is what we had last time, right? We had this little thing where we go ahead and give it a prompt, but then we extract the response from, or we extract the output from whatever the response it gives us, right? Now what we're actually gonna do right over here is we're gonna go through and make this into something where you basically press a button on a web page, it sends this request, and then it displays the output back on the web page. So to do that, what we're gonna do here is I'm just gonna basically, actually we can keep most of this since we're actually gonna be reusing a lot, but just follow along with what I'm doing, right? First thing we want to do here, let's go over to the top right here. Go ahead and say from Flask import Flask and JSONify. So what we're doing right here is importing Flask, which we're basically going to be using to create this kind of web app with the Python in the backend. Then JSONify, because what we're going to do is have our own little API where whenever you press a button, it goes ahead and requests from our API that then makes the call to the OpenAI API, then gets the request back, and then gets the response back, and then puts it into JSON, and then from that JSON we extract the message that we need, that we then go ahead and display on the web page. It'll make more sense once we code it out, but that's why we have JSONify, right? Now what we're also gonna do right here is, actually we don't even need this, I just put this in here, but what we're gonna actually do is import Flask cores, or we're gonna do from Flask cores import cores. The reason for this is just like some policy stuff about like basically accessing different APIs across different web pages and things like that. Don't worry about it, it's just something like a technical type of thing. Now, next thing we're gonna do right here is we're actually gonna, let's move this code down for now. What we're gonna do is we're gonna say app equals Flask name. So here we're just creating the Flask app, right? Here we're gonna say cores app. Again, don't really worry too much about this stuff. Even I'm not really 100% sure what it's doing, it's just needed for whatever authentication and stuff like that. Here we're gonna say app.route. So we're basically creating our directory which we're gonna be calling at app.route / get poem methods equals get. Let me explain this. So what we're doing here is we're basically creating this thing called get poem, and we're saying the method to get. So this means if someone makes a get request to the get poem directory, what it's gonna execute this code basically, right? So if you go ahead and, for example, put in your URL bar, the localhost / get poem with a get request, what it's gonna do is it's then gonna run this code, right? That's what it's basically doing right here. This is how we're creating our own little API. So here what we're gonna do is create a function, def get poem. Then what we're gonna do is go right here, and then we're gonna add a bunch of this other stuff, right? So we're gonna go here. We're gonna go, let's see, we're gonna go like this, go like this, def get poem, there we go. Perfect, right? So now as you guys can see, we've just reused our old code, put it right here, and now it's gonna run whenever anybody requests this get poem directory with the get request method. Then here what we're gonna do is say poem. Oh, sorry. Let's go here. We're gonna say poem underscore text equals completion dot. Oh yeah, this is basically what we have here. So you can actually just reuse this. You can actually go here. Then you can go here. We can say poem text equals completion dot choices dot zero. So I already explained this. We're just basically from whatever OpenAI gives us back, we're just extracting the response. Then here we're gonna say poem text equals str poem text. Reason why we're doing this is because whatever we're getting from this that OpenAI has given us, it's not JSONifiable basically. So we're first converting it into a string, and then we're gonna turn that into JSON with like JSONify, which we'll do right now. So what we're gonna do is return, meaning this is what we're gonna be outputting back. We're gonna say JSONify. Then the key in our JSON is gonna be poem. Oh, key is gonna be poem, and the output is gonna be poem text, or the variable that's associated with the key is gonna be poem text, right? So boom, very simple. And then here we're gonna say if name equals main. Sorry, here we go. And say app.run debug equals true. Not really sure what's going on down here. Don't really know what I did. Okay, just ignore that, guys. I think I pressed something. And then, okay, destroy this print. I know I said destroy, delete the print. Okay, and then now our backend is done, right? So again, just to reiterate, request this directory with the get method. It's gonna run this code, and then it's basically gonna return whatever the output is from the OpenAI API. And then now we're gonna go ahead and create our front end. So we're gonna say index.html. And now let's get creating this, right? So if you're in VS Code, you can do exclamation point, enter, and then you're gonna get all of this basic stuff. Then here we're gonna go into body, and we're gonna say, make an H1. We'll say programming poem. Amazing. Then we're gonna actually create a button here. I'm gonna say on click. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Button. And here we're actually gonna say on click, and we're gonna run this method that we're gonna code here in a second. Fetch poem. Here we're gonna just say get poem. Perfect. And then here we're gonna say paragraph ID equals poem. Perfect. Now we're actually gonna code up this script, this fetch poem function. So we're gonna go here, we're gonna say script, and we're gonna say function function fetch poem, and we're gonna create it right out here. We're gonna say fetch, and then here what we're doing is we're basically just calling that API that we just created with Flask 0.0.1 5000 get poem. Perfect. Not then response. Sorry, this should be lowercase response. It's gonna be response.json. I'm gonna say dot then data. Anything, I'm gonna say document dot get element by ID poem. Right, so what we're doing is getting this element. I'm gonna say dot text content. Here you guys can figure out what that does. Just sets the text content to data.poem. So it's basically our output and then poem, right? So like I said, right here we have the poem key. So what it's doing is it's gonna take the output and then it's gonna get the data associated with the poem key, which is our poem text, which is just our response from OpenAI. And then here we're gonna say dot catch. This is just if there's an error, what it's gonna do is it's gonna go through and log it on the console for us to check. I'm gonna say error. Perfect. And then now guys, this should work if you go ahead and run it. Obviously you need to put in your actual API key here. I haven't done it, but in another VS Code I actually have, and I have it running. So we're gonna go over here and we're gonna find where the actual thing is. Here we go. And then now if I go ahead and press get poem, You guys will hopefully see it work. Boom, just like that. We have it right here. Right, we have everything. Obviously, you could format it better and stuff. This is just to show how to actually get something and output it. It's not the best format. You have these like new lines, and you have, there's extra stuff in the beginning, but you guys can basically see the concept, right? This is how we can basically, put ChatGPT into our own website, put ChatGPT into our own application. And I hope this was easy to follow along and pretty simple. If you guys are confused about anything, if I didn't explain anything properly, drop it down in the comments below and I'll try my best to help out. Alright guys, I now want to go over some errors that you could be facing while developing this. First thing that I came across was this error, which is because of the cores thing. So, I already showed you guys the cores and how to implement that, but if you come across this error, it's because of this cores policy, which says failed to fetch at 15 at index.html. Right here, you guys can see it. So if we actually go there, you guys can see it's actually failing to fetch right over there, right? Just like it says at 15. So because of this, it basically gives the error here. It gives the code right here. It's very simple to go ahead and fix. If you don't know how to fix it, always just use GPT. It'll give you the answer most likely, unless it's outdated, which could be the only issue. But then you will basically figure out how to fix it, right? So that was the one issue. The other issue that you could come across that I did was basically not this JSONifying not working because you're not converting it to a string. If you just try to JSONify it without converting it to a string, for whatever reason, the format that it's in before that is not JSONifiable, so you can't really do that and it'll give you an error. So the way to fix that is to first turn it into a string, which is, strings are then JSONifiable, so you can easily just put it in here and then, return it with a JSONify function, right? So those were two issues I came across. Just wanted to let you guys know how you would actually go about fixing. Alright guys, in the next video, we're going to actually go over coding the simple chatbot. We're going to go over debugging, stuff like that. Most likely, we're also going to go over just refining, testing, stuff like that. It's going to be pretty interesting, guys. In this video, we went ahead and covered the basics of interacting with the API. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, join the Discord down in the description. Everything, all the normal stuff. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.